This is Rachel Dolezal, and I just wanted to let you know that my book, In Full Color, has been selected for the Amazon Kindle monthly deal for March. So pick this up on Kindle for $4.99 throughout March. And you can also get a signed copy of the hardcover book at my website, racheldolezal.com. I will personalize a little message to you and autograph it and send it on its way. So it's at retail price, $24.99 on my website, signed, or on Kindle, you can get it for $4.99.
Hi, I'm Mia St. John, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with a knight. You heard me. Master artist and philanthropist, Sir Daniel Winn. In this episode, we talk about how Sir Daniel Winn got to this country, and it is a pretty crazy, hairy story. Last helicopter out of Saigon, that kind of thing. And then we talk about what made him decide to become a reconstructive surgeon, and then decide he didn't even like that and he wanted to pursue a career and a life in the arts. We talk about why he's passionate about art, what he hopes to get from it, and more importantly, what he hopes to give with it. We talk about some of his philanthropic endeavors, his foundation, his multiple galleries worldwide, and, of course, I ask him how he became a knight. That's a pretty cool story. This is a very heartwarming episode. Some of it might even be tear-jerky. That was not our intent. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, streetwalkers, if you will, this is my conversation with Sir Daniel Winn.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, Sir Daniel Winn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be on this interview.
It is 100% my pleasure. Now, Sir Daniel Winn, I'm not going to call you Sir Daniel Winn through the whole thing.
No, just call me Daniel. I'm more comfortable with that.
Well, you and me both. Now, I have had all kinds of guests on the show, but I've never had a knight.
Okay.
So I'm going to need some details, my man. But first, what I like to do is I like to get an idea of how the guests got to where they are by getting to know how they came to be. So where were you born and raised, man? Where'd you grow up?
Born in Vietnam, in almost like a farm area called Dong Nai and the city of Bien Hoa. And it's about an hour away from Saigon, which is called Ho Chi Minh now. Raised there, escaped in 1975 during the last day of Saigon. Actually got on the helicopter to the top of the building of the embassy and eventually went to Dong Nai airport to go on a cargo plane, not pressurized, and then to Guam for a few months, and then eventually to the U.S. at Camp Pendleton and stayed there for a few months before I was sponsored by a American family. And at that time, I was 9 years old. Ever since then, Southern California all the way.
So you got, I guess, helicopter evacuated during the fall of Saigon when you were 9 years old. Where were your parents? Did they also get evacuated?
That's a very interesting question because there's so much involved and I was so young back then. That's why actually they're doing a movie about this, about my life.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
We'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
There's actually several movie, dramedy, and documentary and TV series coming out too about this. But the gist of it is that my father was in the Southern Vietnamese military that collaborated with the American at that time. And he was thought to be died in the war, but then he was in a coma and eventually got back to the house where my grandmother lived and eventually was given the opportunity to take only a few relatives on the last day of Vietnam to go to the U.S. Embassy, to get on the helicopter, to go on to the cargo plane. I still have nightmares of that day. And you know what you see on TV the last day where people are running and running over and crying in the street? I got to tell you, that is basically burned in my mind and my eyes forever. As 9 years old, I've never even seen airplane, let alone be on one. It was a very surreal experience. I remember that time asking my mom and dad, and actually it was my stepmom and my dad at that time where we're going, they're saying that I was going to go on a metal big bird because I had no idea a concept what a helicopter or a plane was. And then doing that running through the street, they had only one bag. And I was crying because I see people were being shot and there's blood and it was chaos. And the next thing I knew, we were at the U.S. Embassy, stayed there for a few hours. I was freezing. That's one thing I remember. It was so cold because of the offices that the air conditioner was unknown to me. And then we went on top of the building to go on the helicopter and looking down, seeing the chaos, the shooting, the military. I still have nightmare to this day, decades later. It's just something so traumatic that I can't forget.
Wow. That sounds unbelievable. And I'm kind of sorry I even brought that up, man. I didn't mean to traumatize you.
Not at all. I'm sharing this vision now because I've actually come to terms lately, probably within the last year and a half, because a lot of things has happened. And now I'm going to open more up with a major movie and TV series and all that about this, because I feel that it's time to share my history, my past, because it is part of my artwork creation, what I've created to get to this far. People need to understand Sir Daniel Winn, who is he and what makes him create.
Wow. Did you write a book?
Actually, there is, I call it autobiography that is continuously being written. Eventually, it will be published. I'm about maybe a third in. There's other writers that do want to write about my story.
I'm sure.
There's a screenplay, several screenplays being written about right now, because there's so much in my past that's happened that it's hard to pinpoint what is significant, but it is so surreal. It's pretty phenomenal, but I believe that it affects all of us because everyone has tragedy in their life and experience one way or the other of this pain and loss and almost unconscious angst that we need to somehow come to terms with ourselves. Hopefully, what I'm doing now with my art and through the movies, give a little bit more insight of who they are, knowing who I am, so that they can come to terms with their issues or whatever they need to overcome to have a better existence.
Wow, this is not going the way I thought it would at all.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
This is a wonderfully fascinating conversation. I just was less prepared for a dramatic, serious beginning, but this is amazing. I can't wait for you to finish this book. I mean, just what I know so far, and you've only written a third of it? Holy moly, this is going to be amazing. But let's move on to some other things, just because what we've talked about so far, I could talk about this for the rest of the show, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
So I want to move on so we can cover some other things. I'm sure it was a while into your coming to America, you decided that you wanted to go to medical school. Can you tell me why?
Yes. Being Asian American descent, it is children's responsibility to do whatever the parents wants you to do. And I had pretty much only a few options, either be a doctor, engineer, or scientist. That's it. It is a very difficult childhood that I had coming from Vietnam, and my family were very strict, especially with my father and stepmother are both very ambitious. My mother spoke no English. My father did, and that's why he was an interpreter in the U.S. military in Vietnam. And when he came over, he and my mother went to school, studied very hard, even though it was very difficult for them. My father worked picking strawberries, and my mother worked at a mushroom factory. And my father studied law, and my mother studied architecture school. She became a successful architect, and my father became a great attorney who eventually worked for the U.S. government as a public defender. So they expected high expectation from me, and pretty much I had no option. Actually, I had two options, doctor or engineer. So for me, I decided to make my parents happy because that's what Asian children do, is to follow the strict guidance of their parents. So I went to pre-med and eventually med school and scholarship and studied hard. They were very strict on me. I chose that because I was very artistic. And even during that time, all I wanted to do was create, draw, sculpt, create. And I just did that to make them happy. And I did very well at it. But eventually, when I graduated, I said to them, here's what I did for you, and I want to do something for myself now. And that's where I went into the arts.
Your parents sound fascinating as well. Is there books on their lives coming? Because that sounds pretty cool, going from strawberries to being a lawyer and then from mushroom factory to being an architect. Where's their story? Where's their book?
Their stories is definitely a major part in my book, because who I am is a reflection of who they are also as well. My creativity came from my stepmother drastically, because she really was creative in that sense. And for my father, believe me, I was brought up extremely strict, because as a public defender, when he worked for the court, every night when we have dinner, he would tell me, you don't do this, you don't do that. So I was not allowed to go out, have friends, on the phone, you name it. The only thing I would do is study in high school and junior high, and even in college, was to study. And in high school, I could play sports, but I could not have friends over. I could not talk to friends. I could not, get this, I could not even watch certain TV or listen to music, because they were so strict, because my father was at court pretty much all the time. And he was so, I think, traumatized of what's happening, that he wants to make sure that I'm protected. So I was literally living in a bubble, in a sense, and it was tough. So in a way, I really didn't understand the world until I was on my own. And that was an experience of a lifetime, I would say. So yes, to answer your question, they are mostly in my book to explain who I am, because I'm a reflection of them.
Absolutely. I think that in the Asian and Asian American cultures, family is a lot more revered and respected than, let's just say, in Whitey's world, right? Like me and all my friends, not only do we not care what our parents would have wanted us to be, most of us don't even know, because it never came up. So
wow. And for my culture, because how my parents were raised by my grandmother and how I was raised, I think it's just expected. It's almost like me breathing. It's like, this is what you do, and there's no other options. It's almost like I was kept in a bubble, and I didn't really understand the American culture, society of family. And it's not right or wrong. It's just different. And I guess the direction how you're raised affects who you become. And for me, I don't know any other way. And I think if they were more Americanized, I couldn't say one is better than the other. It's just who I am now is because of my culture, my heritage, how I was raised. It's an effect of everything to bring me who I am today.
I think that family, education, and expectation are very important to certain groups. And I think that the groups that those things are important to succeed a lot more than the groups that don't put that much weight on those three things. So kudos to your family and your parents for making you turn out to be such a good dude. You could have gone down some pretty rough roads.
Oh, yeah.
Had you been too Americanized. So well done, Mom and Dad. So you went to medical school, and because of your creativity, I'm guessing, you decided in a particular field of medicine.
Yes, I wanted to be a reconstructive surgeon, because being a doctor was, to me, seems very not fascinating enough for me. So I wanted to do something more creative, and I had a knack with my hands and imagination. So even when I was in pre-med, I was so good with my hands, because I was working as an undergrad and did research with immunology and reconstructive surgery for doctors. And they were so impressed with my technique of suturing and surgery that they actually used me to teach at that time medical students how to suture, because it was so creative how I used my hands and what I was able to do. So in reconstructive surgery, I chose that because I thought at that time that was the only course of direction that I was allowed to do. At least that would give me some type of creativity with my hands and imagination to do what I want to do. But all said and done, after I graduated, it wasn't enough. It didn't really fill my heart and soul. My spirit was so down that I decided to go on my own. And not that my parents didn't accept it, they did, but I didn't want to disappoint them. So for quite a few years, I think about 3 years or so, I was actually homeless. I lived in my car, and I was literally showering at the gas station. I mean, I remember a point in time that I would go to phones. Back then, this is old school. I would go to the phone booth and check if they had leftover coins. So I have money to buy top ramen. You can buy at that time, I think 10 top ramen for $1. So that's what I used to live for 3 years. I was literally living in my car in the streets, do whatever I can, because I was working at Aaron Brothers at that time.
I don't know what that is.
It's like a Michael's now. It's like a supply store.
Okay.
The reason I worked there, I think I was getting paid like maybe $2 an hour. And I got everything at a discount, art supplies. So that's why I worked there primarily. And the money was basically just enough to get gas and basic things that I can use to survive. And from there, it became something almost divine where I am today. But I've gone through a lot, from war-torn Vietnam to struggling and living in the streets. And not that my parents wouldn't support. They did not know any of this. I didn't want to have any of their support because I pretty much have a lot of pride. And I would say that they rejected it or approved or not approved. I wanted to prove to myself more than anything that if this is my choice, I don't want anyone to help me. And I want to make sure that they see that I can be successful. But by doing so, I do see the extreme of one over the other. Now I'm fortunate enough to live in a very comfortable lifestyle. But overall, I've seen and met and dined with billionaires all the way to dine and wine with hobos. And, people are people. I adore and respect all of them. But the extreme of life that I have one to the other has affected me drastically. And I am putting it into my artwork to communicate a little bit about life in general so everyone can understand.
Beautiful.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
So I ran into previous guest of the show, Chris Gronkowski, the other day, and it went a little something like this.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Chris. Hey, you know what sucks? When I get done with my workout at the gym, my protein shake's not cold anymore, man. It's room temperature.
Weird. I haven't run into you at the gym lately.
Busted. Okay, truth be told, I don't work out, but I do get thirsty after a long day of podcasting. I just can't seem to keep my cocktails cold.
You should use an ice shaker.
What's an ice shaker?
The ice shaker is a double-walled, vacuum-insulated stainless steel shaker bottle with a patented twist and agitator that breaks up the protein powders.
So you're saying I should switch to an ice shaker, take out the agitator so I can fit more ice in the cup and it'll stay cold longer?
Steve, you don't need more ice. The ice shaker is third-party tested and verified to keep your drink cold for 30-plus hours.
Chris, you're a genius. I'll still remove the patented screw and agitator and just add more booze.
I guess technically you could, but if you actually use the ice shaker as a protein drink cup, the agitator breaks up the powder and doesn't bounce around like you're shaking a paint can.
Why are we still talking? Let's party.
Gronk style!
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is the new sponsor at Fascination Street Podcast. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank. All 5 sharks made an offer with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
When did you know that being an artist was what you wanted to be? I know that you didn't scratch that creative itch with being a reconstructive surgeon, but there had to be something in you that pulled you toward something artistic. I mean, you worked at Aaron Brothers so that you could get the discount on the supplies. When did you know that that was what was going to scratch that itch, that your artistic expression was what was going to satisfy you and fill that hole, for lack of a better term?
You know how interesting that question is, because I've never been asked that. I've been in hundreds of interviews. Nobody's really asked me that in that way. And I've always wanted to bring that up. The epiphany is what I call it. My life from birth to that point where that epiphany arises was extremely sheltered and private, introverted, even though I'm a very extroverted person. I didn't communicate or was able to communicate verbally because I did not have friends. Pretty much, I didn't have a family because my father and mother was most of the time are school and work. And as a child, I was abandoned numerous times, and that's another story. But during all that, I was a very rambunctious, angry childhood because I was abandoned by my birth mother. And when my uncle basically tried to save me and took me away, he went to war and died. So I was abandoned by them. At that time, my grandmother could not take care of me. They put me into an orphanage. And I was such a rambunctious and not a bad child, but acted out because I felt so unloved and unwanted that I acted out that then at that point, the nuns at the orphanages abandoned me too and kicked me out. So luckily for me, my grandmother, I went to live with her and she couldn't handle me. But by that time, my father did come back from the war because they thought he died. And to answer your question, when I first started to draw or even sculpt, it was my way of communicating. I couldn't communicate through my action of being a very rambunctious or angry child, or even as a teenager or even as a young adult. I was not able or given the opportunity to have friends, to communicate, to socialize, to communicate to anyone. My source and my way of communicating is through my art, through canvas, through paper, through pens, pencil, and through sculpture, through clay. That was my form of expression because I had no other way of expressing. And when I did that, it calmed me. It made me feel that somebody is going to look at this and listen to me. Because I believe in my early part of my life, I felt no one was listening. I felt nobody was noticing, and I didn't think anybody cared. So when I did my art, although at that time, nobody really looked at it, it was my visual language that I felt I am communicating, and it transcends any languages, whether it's Vietnamese, Spanish, French, English. I felt that it's my way that now people can hear me. I am now heard. So that was the epiphany that I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to express and share my vision, and it will transcend any languages that hopefully everyone can understand.
I could not have hoped for a better answer.
Okay.
That is amazing. When you were living in your car and you had, let's just say, a limited opportunity filled future, if that makes any sense, you had already decided you were not going to go into the medical field. I'm assuming there was a time period where you were transitioning, trying to figure out exactly what you were going to do. Were you scared about your future at all?
At that time, no. And here's the reason. I had nothing to really compare what success or luxury would be like at that moment. And I didn't know what the future behold because I only experienced, I would say, solitude, inner anger. And when it was a child, when it was abandoned, you know, you think of the movie Oliver Twist or even The Orphans back then. That's what I was like when I was a child, when nobody was taking care of me. I literally went next door to steal fruit, and I would go to the Vietnamese market and, you know, literally stole little sandwiches, bread just to survive. So when I was living in the street, to me, that was not a big deal because I did not have the extreme at that time to compare what wealth was and what poverty was. Because even when I was living with my parents, they were very frugal. I was very limited with my income and resource, and because all I focused was on school and making sure that they were happy. But if you ask me now, am I scared now? The answer is yes. It's interesting that when you do not experience both extreme, it didn't really matter. You have nothing to lose. But when you do have something now and success, you're even more scared and you become much more conservative and not wanting to go back to that moment where it was very traumatic and ingrained in part of your brain that you never want to go back to that, even though that's what made you who you are. Am I scared now? Yes. Were I scared back then after college where I lived in my street? No, because nothing to compare. But now I believe I have more to lose because a lot of people are depending on me. It's not that I'm scared for me, but now where I am now, I have such a follower and staff and people that depend on me, collectors who depend on my work. And I don't want to disappoint in a sense that they trust me, or the people that have been with me for decades working with me. I don't want them to feel deserted. So I'm scared that if I don't continue to be doing what I need to do, that I will affect their lives, not just mine.
That makes sense. You have nothing to lose, or at least you don't know that you have anything to lose when you don't have anything. And then when you get things, you're like, holy shit, I don't want to lose all this. This is awesome.
That's totally true too. Not that I am materialistic. When you have good food on your table, you now can compare and contrast when you didn't have food and you were hungry, and you get scared after that. Every time I have a feast, I would always have that moment of what if this doesn't happen anymore? And it does put in subconsciously that insecurity in yourself, especially with me being an individual who have been so abandoned numerous times as a child. It never leaves you. That is my struggle. I'm constantly trying to come to terms with that, even to this day.
Well, for those listening, I think we are all in agreement that top ramen tastes better when you don't have to eat it.
Now, on another note, I wanted to add with that, I am an expert to make top ramen in 30 different ways, from savory to sweet.
Oh, I can't imagine the sweet ramen. That sounds amazing. So with your art, now art has changed your life in ways you never, ever would have imagined when you were working at that store to get supplies for a discount. What are some of the biggest ways that art in general has changed your life, just your life?
Art throughout the world, or my art itself?
I'm talking about your ability to create art that people give a shit about, because your art is amazing and has taken you places and given you opportunities and experiences that I can't imagine you would have ever dreamed possible back then.
I am very fortunate and blessed, and I am very appreciative and have gratitude that I have an innate ability to be able to create. And I believe it's a God-given gift. Since my technical ability came from my study in medicine, I have what I call total recall of anatomy. So I use no models to create what I need to do technically. But my work is more of an abstract, and I coined my style as existential surrealism. And what it is that my whole life is surreal, and it's like a dream. And I believe everybody always trying to understand what their existence is about. Why are we here, and what happens when we leave the world? So my goal is to create a body of work during my lifetime to have all of us to have a better understanding of who we are. And it's constantly being evolved in my body of work to try to explain universal truth. So for example, years ago, I started my first artwork, and I consider it to be chapter 1. And right now in my lifetime, I may be in chapter 20, chapter 30, but hopefully by the time I leave this world, that chapter is the last chapter, and that becomes what I call the existential surrealism book, that instead of reading something, you can look at my work from the beginning to end and have a better understanding of what is the reason and what is the purpose why we are here. And my work is abstract, but it is technically very skilled, utilizing mostly mathematics. I use a lot what's called the golden ratio, study the Fibonacci formula to give something that is very pleasing to the eye so that you gravitate toward to it. Because once a person is gravitate towards something that is very aesthetically pleasing to them, then hopefully it's like an onion being peeled layers and layers that they can see more deeply profound. And it's almost like the rabbit hole. How deep do you want to go? And the deeper you go, the more you can understand about universal truth, ultimately about yourself. And when you do understand about universal truth and about yourself the most you can, hopefully at that time you can embrace your existence and the others surrounding you to give the world a better place to be. Because when we leave this world, all of us will transcend to the next level, whether it's energy or another parallel omniverse. It doesn't matter. It's what we do now that have us having a better life and existence. My work hopefully communicates that both in paintings and sculpture. And lastly, the art that really gravitates to me is art that has symbolism. So that's why what I'm trying to do is merge the old masters. My favorite all-time mentor, I would say, is Da Vinci. And of course, I love Michelangelo's sculptures, Bernini's, and I love the old masters, Raphael, Botticelli, Caravaggio is one of my favorite. I incorporate that to the more contemporary abstract artists of our time, whether it is Dali, Picasso, Pollock. So what I do is I merge the two worlds together to give us a better understanding of our existence. So my work is not just pretty or beautiful or just abstract and you don't understand what it is. I'm trying to merge the two so people can, quote unquote, read it as a visual language to better an understanding about themselves.
Wow. It's like I did send you questions ahead of time. You used the phrase universal truth twice, and I was going to ask you what sort of universal truth are you trying to expose or create with your art, but I think you just answered that.
Good. Well, universal truth is, what is the existence of life? Why are we here? What is the purpose? We all gravitate toward some kind of divinity, God, religion, spirituality, whatever it is. We're always trying to attain that answer of what is the purpose and meaning of life and why we are here. And the answer is not so simple. There may be no answer verbally or any languages. However, in a visual language, through art, and even through performance art, through music, that when you hear things, you can't explain it. You just feel it. I guess the best example is think of the word love. History would show hundreds, if not thousands, of poems and writing about what love is. But is that sufficient? Is that enough for what love is? No. So my statement in my art and painting is like that. Sculptures is that when you look at it, it's like the word love. You can't really describe it. And a picture's worth more than 1,000 words. This could be worth an infinite amount of words I cannot even describe. Same thing with universal truth. It's like love. You can't explain it, but you feel it. You know it in your very core. It's like the energy that we all share. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Love exists. Universal truth does exist. We may not be able to explain it, but we know it's there and we can feel it. And that's what I'm trying to communicate through my artworks and paintings and sculptures.
I think that's a wonderful explanation. And I would say that everything you just said also applies to the word humanity.
Absolutely.
What do you want to be remembered for when you're no longer here? What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, on my social media, I don't remember exactly the phrase that I put, is that the only significance of our existence in our life is the positive impacts that we have on others. In essence, what I want to be remembered is what the positive influence that I've done for others while I am here, whether it is through my art that it helps them, or through my philanthropic works, or just even a kind gesture that I did or any of us have done. I would say pay it forward, that what I've done for one, they would pay forward the others. I want to be remembered that I made a positive impact to anyone in this world, that hopefully they would pay it forward for future generations to do the same.
Wonderful answer. Again, did I give you these questions in advance? You seem awfully prepared.
No, not at all.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
You know those popping phone handle things that you see on everyone's phones nowadays? Well, how would you like to put your logo on them? Does your podcast or band need new merch? Do you want to bring attention to your new book or film? Maybe you need something unique for your Patreon or crowdfunding campaign. Then visit thelogopop.com, where you can customize them with the logo of your podcast, band, business, art, school mascot, or whatever else you can think of. These are way more affordable than you may think at thelogopop.com. Mention where you heard this ad and get free shipping on your entire order. Remember, that's thelogopop.com to order your custom popping phone handles. That's thelogopop.com.
Let's get back into it.
So we talked about helping people and paying it forward. Tell me about your foundation. What's it called and what do you do?
I established a foundation probably about 2 decades ago, and it's called the Academy Fine Art Foundation. It deals with art. It's 100% run without any pay to anyone. It's pretty much all volunteers, and I'm one of the major contributor. And what they do is through art, they raise money to support the artists, to make them well known, to donate the art to museums, nonprofit charity, and through nonprofit charity, they can use those art to try to raise funds and money. And I've done a lot of that, and I've raised probably to this day maybe over 10 millions or more. I don't keep count. And 100% of that goes to charities all over the world. And my biggest support for charities is I am huge into orphanages and the elderly and the less fortunate. And there's a story behind why I'm so passionate about those charitable groups, because there's so many charity out there that we can support, whether it's Cancer Society, the AIDS Foundation, or homeless. They're all significant and important. But I'm focused on orphanage because, in a sense, I felt I was an orphan when I was a child. And I know how incredible difficult it was. And believe me, being in an orphanage in a Catholic school, isolated back then in the late 60s, was not easy for me. And the elderly, because I'm watching all the elderly, my grandmother, when she was in Vietnam, I saw how incredible the struggle that she went through to support her children, my uncle. I wanted to support them because, again, I feel that we should respect our elders. And a lot of places, and even in Vietnam, the elders maybe not have family, and if they have no one, nobody's taking care of them. And especially in Vietnam, the government really doesn't have a program to support the orphans or elderly. It's all through the temple and all through donations. So my goal is to help all those in needs for that is necessary. And I think that we've done a good job. And to answer your question from the beginning and talk about the title Sir, we can address how I got that. It's basically through my philanthropic work. But the foundation I established has helped hundreds, if not millions, of less fortunate children all over the world And I will continue to do that throughout my existence to hopefully impact a positive influence on them, because you never know. One of those children could be the next genius or artists or leaders of the world. One of those children can come up to a cure for cancer. So you never know who can you help that will make such a difference in our world and our future generations.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask anyway. So typically the designation Sir, it is a Order of the British Empire designation. How, who, why, when?
Well, this is actually a very, very funny story, and it's surreal for me. Basically, through my philanthropic work, I do a lot of charity, and I go through a lot of the charities, and I would donate my artworks, and I would be up on stage to auction it off. And each of those events, I would raise sometimes hundreds of thousands or even $500,000 on one event alone, and 100% would go with them. And I never thought of anything else of it because charity's charity. But eventually, at one event, there was the son of a prince approached me and wanted to have dinner with me. And I've been courteous. I went to dinner out of respect and courtesy. I think he had a entourage, and I'm not sure if it's his agent or assistant or friend, but they wanted to interview me and talk to me and said that they want to have more information about my background and my life, so that they wanted to give it to his father. His father was the Prince of Germany. And in his lifetime, his father only knighted, I believe, 4 people. And to me, it was surreal. And I had no idea what that meant. At first, I thought it was actually a joke. And I says, I'm not interested. He called and we talked again. And we set up another appointment and we met again. And at the time, I brought my agent in, and because I'm confused, I'm saying, what is this about? Does it cost money? Do I have to pay something? What do I have to do? Because I'm definitely non-deserving. There's so much more people that absolutely is much more deserving than me. So the answer was that, no, you cannot buy this. It's something that's rare. Not any amount of money can buy this title. And the prince, it's the princely family of Neustadt in Germany. It's only a title, but they vetted me. And at that time, I just let it go. I laughed at it. I said, okay, if you don't need money, I think maybe this is just something, it's not real. Then all of a sudden I get a call probably like 7 or 8 months later saying that his father, Prince Waldemar, and the princess, his wife, was flying over from Germany to meet me, to finalize, to approve that I'm going to have a title of Sir of being a knight. I just was confused. And I said, why? And I kept questioning all that time. What do you want? I have nothing to offer, and I have definitely not deserving of this at all. So please do reconsider. But he flew over. I met with them, and they wanted to me the title because of my philanthropic work. Basically, the title is for my goodwill. And I said, look, I haven't raised that much. There are others that have raised hundreds of millions, and there are billionaires out there that give so much more than I do. But the idea is not about the amount, but the gesture and what my philosophy and what I've been doing, because they were, I guess, following me and impressed with what I do. So I decided and accepted the title, more not just the significance of it. It's more of a title that if I can able to use that to raise more awareness to the charity and to the orphans and to the elderly, maybe that's a good thing. And then I found out that I was the first Vietnamese that was given this honor as a knight. And it was interesting enough is that I had interviewed by Forbes Vietnam, Harper Bazaar Vietnam, all these major magazines in Vietnam, and they didn't even know the proper word for the word knight. And I think they translated it more like a hero or something like that, because there's no word as knight in Vietnamese language. So I thought that was very fascinating. But by having that title in Vietnam, what I've discovered within the last several years is that it does bring a little cachet, a little bit credibility for those that want to contribute. So when I ask, you know what, you should contribute to this orphanage, having that title gives them more confidence that, okay, he's been given this title as Sir for his philanthropic work. I'm comfortable of doing the same. So then they decided to give to that orphanage or that elderly home or there's a medical hospital. So in a sense, I feel that in itself was a reason why maybe the universe has serendipitously created this so that more people that are less fortunate can be helped out. So I use that title more of advantage of supporting others because the title to me intrinsically is only a title. But if it can do good with it, that's great. That's why I said I prefer to call Daniel. People call me Sir Daniel. I'm uncomfortable, but if it can bring it to positive, to influence to others, I'm happy for it. And by the way, the prince passed away a year ago, and it broke my heart because I never had a chance to see him during COVID. I did the prayer that I will make sure that since the fifth person being knighted, I will make sure that he's proud what I have used that title for the betterment of humanity and the world because of what he's done.
That is a phenomenal story. It is heartwarming. And I think that you're right. Just having the title of Sir, it does lend an air of credibility to what you're doing, but also it's an eyebrow raiser, like it commands attention before you even open your mouth. So that's a pretty cool tool to use in your philanthropic endeavors. So that's super dope. I do have a question about when you're walking down the street on the sidewalk, do you take like 2 steps forward, 1 step to the side? That's how the chess piece knight moves.
I got it.
So thank you for telling me about that. I appreciate you because obviously I was going to ask how you got that designation. I want to talk about Beverly Hills.
Yes.
I've been there a couple of times and it's neat, but you're there, I would imagine, a lot. Do you still have your gallery in Beverly Hills?
I have actually 2 galleries in Beverly Hills.
Oh, snap.
The first one was opened about 5 years ago on Santa Monica Boulevard on the Golden Triangle. And the latest one, which is coming up to be a year, is right on Rodeo Drive. The main step where you walk up on Wilshire and on Rodeo, that iconic fountain as you walk up.
Yeah.
I'm right there across from Tiffany, Louis Vuitton, Versace, Audemars Piguet, Breitling. That's like the crown jewel location on Rodeo Drive. Serendipitously, it just happened to fall right on my lap. And from a year ago to this day, I am blown away of how they've actually wanted our gallery and my work to be there. And they couldn't be happier that we are there. So I feel very blessed and almost like surreal because being on Rodeo Drive is like winning the lottery. Because I remember 5 years ago trying to open a gallery on Rodeo Drive, trying to call them, never got a single phone call back. The only reason we got the space on Santa Monica Boulevard on the Golden Triangle is because one of my dearest collective friends knew the realtor in Beverly Hills. But even then, they couldn't even reach the people on Rodeo because they are so very specific and very strict of who they want on Rodeo. I mean, you talk about all the top brand of the world, Hermes, Gucci, Balenciaga, Alexander McQueen, Louis Vuitton. I mean, they are the who's brand of the world. And here I am, just, Daniel with his gallery with art. I'm thinking to myself, I cannot put myself in that same category, but all of a sudden, here I am. So it's kind of blown away. I feel like I won the lottery of location, and I'm very proud and blessed and very grateful how that happened. So not only those 2 galleries, but we also have a gallery in Vietnam. It's in Binh Hoa, the place I was raised and born. And I did that out of respect and courtesy of my father who passed away. It's also a VIP cafe. It serves the best coffee. It's like a coffee gallery, great location. I did that as a courtesy, as a tribute for my father, because I felt that's where I was born, that was where I was raised. And I want something that remembers every time I go back to Vietnam about my heritage and culture and my history and my background, because back then I had nothing. And here, that gallery serves to give the world a little bit of insight of art, of universal truth, but also it's a place where we do a lot of charity. I do a lot of charity to give out to the less fortunate. If somebody needs something, all they need to do is go there and they will be provided for.
Growing up as a poor white kid, I felt like I won the lottery just when I was able to walk down Rodeo Drive. I can't imagine how it feels to have 2 galleries in Beverly Hills and 1 in Vietnam. What is the name of your gallery?
Winslavin Fine Art. And the one in Vietnam is called VIP Cafe Gallery. It's a different style over there, but it's really high end. I mean, you walk into the gallery in Vietnam, it's actually a 5,000 square feet, 3 floors, and it looks like something right out of Beverly Hills. And the gallery on Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive is spectacular as well. I was the one that kind of designed it and created it in a way that it's artistic, museum, and that everyone can appreciate. And we're open arms to everyone. Doesn't matter whether you are able to collect or just an admirer. Just want everyone to come in and appreciate the art and have a better understanding of what I'm trying to communicate.
That is fantastic. So I want to talk about the movies of your life.
Sure.
Go. When can I see them? What can I do to help? Tell me about these movies.
Okay. When you see me and meet me, the first impression is that, God, this guy is total Hollywood because my style is very unique. I am a rock and roll, debonair, GQ chic.
Oh, I've seen your Instagram. You are not lying.
By the way, the Instagram, check it out. It is at Sir Daniel Winn, Sir Daniel Winn. And the reason is that when people look at me, it's very Hollywood, even though I am nothing of Hollywood. But because I'm in Beverly Hills, and recently I was a major sponsor for the Asian World Film Festival. It's like the Asian Oscar. And they approached me to create their statuette award, just like the Oscar.
Ooh.
I did that last year, and I did 5 different awards. One of them is the main one, which is like for the movies, like Best Actor, Director, and all that. And the other was just one, just like humanitarian award, those kind of awards. So 5 total. And I'm the only artist in the world that created for the Asian World Film Festival. And Asian World Film Festival, at first, I thought it was just Asia, like China, Japan, but it's not. The Asian World Film Festival is everything except just America and Europe. Everything else is considered Asia over there, which is very fascinating because you're talking about India, Kazakhstan, all those are considered Asia. So the president and founder, George Shamshon, approached me to create this award, and I did, and we did an unveiling of it. And then the first award, which was, I believe it was in November, they presented all these awards and everybody absolutely loved it. And because of that, a lot of directors, for some reason, I caught their attention. And I guess when I met with them, they saw me as a rising star and my image and look could be perfect for the movie. And I said, I'm not an actor. I'm solely here as a artist, and I want to communicate in my life to do good. So they approached me on a different idea, which I thought was very fascinating. And that is to create a movie. One of the very award-winning director, actually several of them, they want to do a dramedy based on my life in Vietnam when I was born all the way to now as almost like a success story. Think about Oliver Twist movie, but what happens to Oliver Twist now as he's grown? So they want to do a movie, something like that, with a relationship with my grandmother. And then there's another movie that wants to do a documentary, which I said that my life is still ongoing, so I'm not ready for that. But there's another director that wants to do a TV series, a major one on ABC or Netflix, that concurrently tells a story now, maybe 5 to 8 seasons, but flashbacks of my past to give my current life now in the world of the arts, because the world of the arts is so incredibly fascinating. Money laundering, plagiarism, thief. And I mean, it is so salacious sometimes. It is so almost mysterious and unique that nobody knows about. And that's why they want to do a whole series of this, because it's something that is intriguing. And I'm still thinking about that one because that takes a lot of time. You know, even one season that's 8 to 10 episodes, that would take 4 to 5 months just to do the filming of that. So right now they're doing their, what they call treatment and screenplay. And then I will show it to my publicist and agent. And if they think it's a good move, I will probably go forward with that. But my focus is to make sure that my existence in this world is something that's positive for everyone, whether it's to my art. And if we can do a TV series or movies that is a positive influence to share my vision of what universal truth and how everyone can embrace themselves in a better way, then I'm for that. So that's why all these great movies are coming up. And it's an opportunity that, even for me, it's surreal. I wake up in the morning, open my eyes, and I still can't believe where I am.
Well, I have been completely enthralled and fascinated this entire time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I do want to say that I know that you sort of blend old world and new world masters. And I'm sure that this thought has occurred to you because you're a really, really bright man and always looking for creative juices. But look into some street artists. I had a guy on here. He actually painted that thing right there behind me with spray cans. So there's a street artist here in town in San Antonio who he'll get permission, obviously, from a building owner, and then he'll put up a mural of somebody who's famous or has passed or has made an impression on the city or whatever. And he recently did one with a very influential Hispanic musician named Vicente Fernandez. And he passed. And there was this outpouring of love from the city. Down here in San Antonio, the Latin culture is huge. We're so close to Mexico, and it's really... It's huge here. So he did this mural on the side of a restaurant, and he's getting national attention and all this kinds of stuff just because he does all these murals and they're all beautiful. And so here's what I'm thinking you should do. You should follow me back on Instagram so that I can send you some of this guy's pictures just so you can appreciate it. You don't have to say anything to him. You don't have to do anything at all. Just appreciate, because I think you will. And I think you should incorporate some street artistry into your masters.
Actually, we are now. Art to me is as long as it gives people positive impact. And by the way, just to comment on the spray paint in the back of what I'm singing right now, that's awesome. To me, an artist's expression is about who they are and about their life. And what they're expressing is so powerful that it moves people. And definitely, whether it is fine, detailed realism through oil canvas or spray paint on a wall, to me, art is so incredibly rare and precious that if you feel it and see it, embrace it, definitely. So we do have a gallery director that is more into the contemporary art, and he is definitely bringing in street artists and artists that I feel are so incredibly talented. So please definitely send me an Instagram. I want to see this artist and I want to present it to our director because I love art. And if anything can do to bring other artists out to share their vision to the world and impact them in a positive way, that is a dream and an honor and privilege for me to be able to do so. So please do that.
Oh, fantastic. I will. His name is Colton Valentine. And while I was interviewing him, I went over and did an on-location interview, and he was in the process of doing a 6-panel portrait of Kobe Bryant because he had just passed.
Yes.
And it is unbelievable. I'll send that to you too.
Wow.
Sir Daniel Winn. Everybody go check him out on Instagram at Sir Daniel Winn. That's WINN. Look for other social media platforms. I'm sure this dude is everywhere. Daniel, before I let you go, is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about today? Did I miss anything?
Nope, but I would like to say a couple things to end it in a positive note. First of all, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be interviewed. Secondly, I hope that the message I give out would give a positive message for everyone out there to share with everyone around you. And lastly, what I want to say is that every action, there is a reaction. Every action, there is a consequence. So just remember that whatever you do in your existence, even a gesture or a nice word or embrace to someone near to you makes a whole difference to everyone. So just remember that to be good to others and be good to yourself, because when you do that, your existence and your life is going to be so much more rewarding than you can imagine. And that's my philosophy. And that is what I want to share, if anything, in this podcast that people can take from and have their existence be a better existence in this world.
Wonderful. Sir Daniel Winn, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic philanthropic schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. Man, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you, as well as all of you listening, get out there and go make some art inspired by our conversation here today. I look forward to seeing it. And thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend, subscribe, and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.